Hello everyone and welcome to the Educational Webinar Jam. Today, Mr. Feruz Akbarov is presenting his presentation based on how to become a creative English teacher. He is a native of Uzbekistan who did his Bachelor's of Arts in English Philology from Samarkand State Institute of Foreign Languages. He furthered his studies by winning a state-funded scholarship for pursuing a 2-year master's course at the University of Pune. He is also a winner of multiple awards both domestically and internationally. One of his most remarkable achievements was in China, where he was awarded the Best TESOL Teacher Year of 2014. He is a philanthropist by nature, so he has committed himself to volunteering, public engagement both at home and abroad, physically and remotely. Currently, he is running an association of English teachers in Uzbekistan. It's called ETA Uzbekistan as the founder. Welcome, Mr. Feroz. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for a fabulous presentation and the introduction. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. Hello, everyone. I am Feruz Akbarov, a proud representative of Uzbekistan across several different international platforms. And today I have the privilege of representing Uzbekistan yet on another international platform, Educational Webinar Jam. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the topic, which you might be excited about, how to become a creative English teacher. And I'm going to walk you through the topic in 4 easy and practical ways. Just out of curiosity, if you put in the search engine of YouTube or Google, like how to become a creative English teacher, not many things may pop up, but just because this topic has not been thoroughly investigated by top professionals, and there is a lot more to be done, especially in terms of being a creative teacher. So what I'm about to share in today's presentation is mainly, comes from my humble global teaching experience in countries like Poland, China, Central Asian countries like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and my motherland, Uzbekistan. So now let's proceed to the presentation. This is my kind of a little tradition that I oftentimes start off my presentation with a quote, and this time I chose none other than my own quote, which contains the gist of my presentation. Let's check it out. We should teach to inspire, but not just to educate. Ladies and gentlemen, the problem of not being a creative English teacher stems from exactly the same problem, like a wrong approach of teaching. Most of the times the teaching or the teachers focus on teaching itself or just, transmitting some kind of knowledge, but little do they care about inspiring their students to love the language learning experience. And that's why you don't have a lot of creative English teachers or creative English learners. Now let's proceed further. Luckily, I've been in, like I said, in many different countries with my teaching, and I talked to lots of English teachers, both at home and abroad, and they expressed their concerns about teaching. Now, I'd like to reflect some of those major concerns, and I'm sure that these problems may also relate to you. Some of the teachers told me what to do as a teacher of English. They had no clues, absolutely. Probably they were a rookie or not that confident about their stuff. And most of the teachers complained about lack of ideas. They had lack of ideas or no ideas at all on how to teach creatively or in an interesting way. And some of the teachers openly accepted their fault of teaching boring classes. And that might be happening somewhere around you or in the classes that you are familiar with. And some of the teachers said that teaching was a killing process, or it was even a hell just because of the other problems. And so the even experienced teachers said that they needed more experience under their belt. They were less confident about what they were doing. And most of the times I come across this question, during the presentations, during the Q&A sessions, most of the teachers ask me about the resources that I used. They ask me to suggest on some effective resources they might immediately incorporate into their classes. I want to mention this. Resources alone cannot be a silver bullet. Resources alone cannot be a solution to your problems, because If the resources were reliable to a large extent, your students would be great in terms of self-study. They wouldn't need you at all in the class. So resources cannot replace you, but they can be just an effective tool to help your teaching process. And last but not least, some teachers openly asked me to share my teaching contents that I created over the years, which I'm going to show you in the coming slides. Anyway, there are these problems that I was able to reflect, some of which here on the slide, and there are many other problems, teacher problems, and I believe all those problems may have one solution, which is none other than creativity. And I'll try to prove that in the coming slides. But before I move on further, I'd like to state a disclaimer. The content of this webinar is the product of my creativity, so please do not forget to give me a credit while using it. And I want you to take this entire presentation as a prelude to the topic, because like I said, at the onset, the topic of creativity and becoming a creative teacher has not been thoroughly investigated yet, and there is many more to be done. So what I'm going to share in this brief presentation, it comes mainly from my global experience. So I hope you will have lots of takeaways by the end of today's session. And here is how the outline looks very quickly. There are going to be lots of I-tasks, and I designed lots of I-tasks because I want this presentation to be a lot more engaging and interactive with you, not in a form of a lecture. So I hope you will be fully engaged. So here comes the first I-task. Ladies and gentlemen, now I'm keeping my eyes on the chat box. Could you please put your answers in the chat box to the following question? What are the qualities of a creative teacher? Like, do you see it as a passionate, enthusiastic, exciting, hardworking? Just put any adjective. Like, what are the qualities of a creative teacher? What is your understanding of a creative English teacher? Please put your responses in the chat box and let me check it out. Okay. Yeah, I'm now checking out your responses. Could you please put it in the chat box? A teacher who is open to new experiences, from Sarah Siddiqui. Thank you. That's nice. Right. Any more? Improvisational. Perfect. Using a variety of innovative tools, from Nasser Drarani. Right. Should be flexible. Perfect. That is by Shoy. I'm sorry. Enthusiastic. Perfect. Alex says it's enthusiastic. Perfect. And you can keep commenting in the chat box. You can interact with each other. So let's proceed further. Eddie Klum says, let's start the show. And I hope and I promise this is going to be just like a show, not a tedious and dull webinar. So like I said, I'm going to walk you through 4 practical and easy to follow tips and hacks on how to become a creative English teacher. And here comes the first one. Work on the details. Ladies and gentlemen, the details are small by nature, but they have a huge impact on how we're going to teach the class. And I'll show you 4 different cases of how to work on the details. First, it's classroom arrangement. Second, the resources. Third, it's teaching techniques. And last, it's essays. Now let's check out one by one. When you think of classroom arrangement, the first thing that comes, pops up in your mind is a different layout of the structure of the seating arrangement. For example, the most prominent ones are traditional, horseshoe, and round table. There are some other variations like semicircle. This is another variation of horseshoe, or double horseshoe. You can see it in the picture below, or group pods, or pair parts. Pair parts are often used at the competitive language schools, and the other variations are used in different public schools as well. Please look at this picture. This picture has been taken from one of my classes. There I am teaching the class at a language school in Tashkent, and I have chosen this class arrangement just because there were series of activities that would most work best in these classroom arrangement only. If I were to choose any other, for example, traditional or pair pods or group pods, it may not work to a large extent. Now, I'll look at this arrow. It's pointing to the seat, to the chair. Now, could you please put it in the chat box? Can you guess what activity is being played in this scenario now? What kind of activity? This classroom arrangement has been designed for a specific activity. And what is that activity? What is the name? A hot chair. Perfect, Ria. Wonderful, excellent, bingo. So that's a hot chair. Hot chair is originally an adult party game, but it has been incorporated in a different format into the education context, and it has been contextualized. And what I did was, in this particular lesson, I created my own version of hot seat. I invited one of the students to sit on this hot seat, and it was about a travel. So each and every student sitting in the horseshoe format was allowed to ask the student one question at a time to guess the country of that student, the student who wants to travel, like which country. Is that Italy? Is that US? Is that Canada? Is that Australia? So the one who could guess the correct answer would get the chance to sit on the hot seat, and will further continue playing this hot seat. It was very much closely aligned with the topic of travel. So you can, you can adjust the entire activity to the content or the context of what you're teaching. Now, let me show you another class arrangement. This was designed by myself. If you just Google it, you may not find the similar format. It's called Quartet, where you put 4 students in small teams, and the entire class is more like a competition. So in this format of class, the students will be able to enhance their following skills like teamwork, group work, collaboration, cooperation. One of the 4 C's in the 21st century skills is collaboration. We need to collaborate very often and think critically. And for that, we need the people around us. And this class is perfectly well designed to cater to that need. So, class arrangement, by changing the seating arrangement, you can, improve your entire class. You can make it as creative as possible, and students would just love it. Instead of sitting in a boring traditional, arrangement, from time to time, very often, like myself, I tend to change the arrangement of the sitting based on the class and the activities that I'm going to have with my students. Now let's talk about the resources. Very often that's a problematic area for lots of teachers because they have no clues about what to create, but some teachers I know, they are super creative. They create, and what you can do is you can recreate something you do. You can make some changes to what you create, and you will have something totally new. That's how you can also become innovative. And you can also blend the resources that you have created, and then you can recreate it, or you can just add something ready-made and tailor-made from other sources, from other teachers. And finally, you can integrate. You can just incorporate something ready-made into your class, and it will just go well. And after all, you can, repeat the entire process. Create, recreate, blend, integrate, repeat, and that's how you can develop your own content, your own courseware over time. The best thing about my teaching experience is that, from the very onset, I went from a different path. I always had at the back of my mind to create my own content and courseware. And that's why, at this time around, I have full content designed for multiple courses like General English, IELTS, speaking courses, etc. Now, I want you to put it in the chat box. Who amongst you have created their entire course from scratch? Now, let's check it out if there are some creative teachers amongst you. Who amongst you created their own courseware from scratch, like from zero all the way to, make it a full content, a full course content? Only for demo lessons, right? Someone says, no, unfortunately, not me, right? Okay, so it means teachers are still pretty much dependent on ready-made courseware and textbooks. Any more responses? Okay, yeah, let's proceed. Today I made, wonderful. Zuhra says, today I made. Yeah, today you can create something, at least a PPT, and the next day you will keep adding and adding more slides, and in a matter of weeks time, you will have almost 100 slide PPT ready. So that means you are slowly but gradually developing and improving yourself as a creative English teacher. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about techniques. And I've chosen two very prominent techniques to make you creative, or to allow you to enhance your creative skills. The first one is gamification. By name, it's a very tricky name and a very confusing term. A lot of people out there are under false impression as if gamification is all about playing games, but it's not true. It's actually not playing games. It's something else. Gamification, as you can see below in the picture, it is transferring the mechanism, the philosophy of games into the educational context and embedding it onto your activity and making your activities more purpose-oriented, more result-oriented. Just check it out. In an activity embedded with gamification, there is a user engagement. There is a reward, there is an achievement, there is a motivation, there is a learning opportunity, and there is also a challenge. When you provide a bit of challenge to your students would love it, because that's how you can, spark their curiosity. You can intrigue them. You can involve them in whatever activity you are having in the class, just because you have embedded the mechanism, the essence of gamification into your activity. And this is what gamification means. There are some people, I've seen some teachers with very rudimentary understanding of what gamification was. To them, it was more like playing games. Okay, it's, fair enough. You can play games, but the games should have a purpose. The games cannot be just for entertainment, for pleasure. The game should have a reward mechanism. The game should be engaging. There has to be a learning opportunity. After playing any kind of random game, that your students should be able to have some takeaways, and only then you will, fit the purpose. You may achieve your purpose, and this is what the gamification is. And now you can ask me, like, how to become creative by utilizing gamification. Just because you are trying to embed those qualities into your activity, this is how you will, over time become more and more creative. So make sure gamification is not just about playing games, but it's more than that. Now let's proceed to the second technique that I'm about to share. It's called the flipped classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure all of you have gone through traditional public schools where we were given, some task at school, and then further to consolidate the task, we were given the home task. So at home, we were busy doing our home task. And this was pretty much a traditional way of teaching in classroom. But in the flip model, things would be, the order of the things would change. Things will be flipped. So you will be given, the task in advance to prepare for the lesson. So you'll have some content to deal with, to familiarize yourself better, to warm yourself up for the class. But then in the class, you will have, ample amount of practice to apply the key concept you learned while preparing at home. And when you go back home, instead of just doing the homework, you will have a chance to further enhance your understanding and extend your learning. And now you can ask me a question again: how to become creative by, applying the flip classroom model? The answer is pretty simple. Just because in these flip model classroom, the teacher has to go the extra mile, always should furnish and supply the students with, lots of content before the class, and that demands the teacher to be a little creative, to work more than the required and more than expected. In a traditional way of teaching, the teacher would normally go to the class and just say, okay, class, now let's begin the class, and today we'll talk about this. The students are totally unfamiliar or totally unprepared for what you're going to bring to your class. But in the flip model, the students are more or less familiar, And to make your students familiar, you need to really exert yourself, always keep an eye on the latest, let's say, developments in ELT world, do some research, do some background check, always, constantly investigate, research, and create and recreate and find lots of stuff to provide for your students. This is how, you will become involuntarily creative teacher. Now let's talk about ECAs. I love doing lots of ECAs, regardless of where I taught, in which country or which public school or the language school I worked for. I always try to take my students outside the confinement of the classroom, because that's where they will be able to put their language to use in the real world setting. That's a very different scenario, because in your classrooms, you have created very comfortable and safe learning zone for your students, that they feel totally comfortable. They feel that themselves just like at home. But once the moment they step out of the safe zones of your classroom, that's when they will, come into contact with the real world setting. There will be noise around. There will be different looking people walking past. I have taken my students to the Japanese garden in Tashkent, to the State Museum, to the bowling center. They have experienced different settings of learning language. And they told me, at the end of the day, they always told me, look, we had a very different experience. Learning English in the classroom was very different to what we did today at the bowling center or at the museum or at the Japanese garden, because those places are real world setting. And that's where we should take our learners to, make them a more empowered learners. And that needs a bit of creativity from the teacher's side, choosing the location, creating a whole host of activities. It's not just I'm taking them to the bowling center and now saying them, okay, speak English. No, it's not like that. I have the agenda created for that. We're just choosing the location and we're trying to adjust the entire event. We're creating an entire event from scratch based from the location. That's what all ECA is about. And here you can see some more international examples of ECAs from China, Poland, Tajikistan, again, capital city Tashkent, Samarkand, and some other Chinese cities. So in other words, ECAs can help you a great deal to become a great creative teacher. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to ask you a question. And I want you to put your answers in the chat box. How often do you reflect on your mistakes? Because that leads us to the next part. How often do you reflect on your mistakes? Please put your answers in the chat box. How often do you reflect on your mistakes? Like very often, seldom, always, once a year, often, yeah. Someone says often. After each lesson, wonderful, Natia. Yeah, I love that answer. Quite a lot. Every time, perfect. Often, once a week, sometimes. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for your involvement. I just love it. Now let's proceed to self-reflection. So self-reflection is the second principle on how to become a creative English teacher. And in order to further elaborate, I'll show you 3 key questions and further break them down into 3 more relevant questions. Number 1 is, how would you teach the same class differently? Number 2, how well would you teach the same class? Number 3, what novelties are you able to integrate into teaching the same class in the future? Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's elaborate on each and every question one by one. The first one is, how would you teach the same class differently? Number 1, things that went wrong or even worked well. Most of the times we need feedback just because we feel that something didn't work well. But how about the other side of the coin? Things that work well. Maybe the circumstances were favorable, that things worked well to your advantage. But how about, if there were unfavorable situations if things didn't work well in the other setting. So even if things work well in one setting, you still need to, sit down and analyze things. Maybe perhaps things may not work well next time. Maybe just because you are lucky. You are lucky that there was a constant supply of electricity, that your entire class was through multimedia. What if there was a power cut? Your entire class was based on multimedia and it just went to waste. And do you have a plan B? So that's what it means to, analyze even when things work well. So there's no time to be too much content and satisfied when things work well. There's still room for analyzing. And with that, we come to the next point, anticipations and emergencies. Like, are you fully ready to anticipate emergencies that may crop up down the line? Like I said, there might be a power cut, Let me give you a very live example. Imagine you have an integrated task. You want to play a short video from YouTube. And the video is about, birthday, let's say. And then you have a follow-up task in a form of a text or something else. So you integrated video and text into an integrated task. Just because there's a power cut, you're not able to play it from YouTube and you don't have the recorded version. So what is the plan B? What you can do is, if you're creative enough, if you're ready for the emergency, you can, do the pantomime. And for this, you don't even need to speak the words. You can just show with what you have. Look, I'm going to demonstrate these for you. What was that? That was a birthday cake, So you can incorporate simple acts of pantomime in the absence of your YouTube video. So you are now creative enough. You have the plan B. This is how you are fully ready for the anticipation and the emergencies. And number 3 is, this is actually, a sore point. Like I referred at the onset, the teaching is, basically focused on the result, but not the creativity. The teachers usually focus far greater on how much progress their students make, rather than inspiring them to be a little bit creative, to, go the extra mile or just think outside the box. So if you want to become a creative teacher, you need to, go in the direction of creativity-inspired teaching. It's something else from what you might be doing till now. So when you start inspiring your students through a series of activities like gamification or the flipped classroom model, to inspire them to be a little more creative, you will have very little job to do. You have my words. You will have very little job to do in terms of student engagement and student motivation, just because you inculcated the spirit of creativity into your students, right into their hearts, not just the minds, okay? So once your students love being creative, and you will love the entire procedure as an observer, as someone who monitors the entire process. Now let's proceed further. The second question, how well would you teach the same class? Number 1, improved lesson goals. The lesson goals are the heart and soul of what you do and what you teach in the class. And if you have a wrong plan, ineffective plan, the plan which is not clearly stated, you have very little chance of achieving any goal, any desired goal, any result with very poor and underdeveloped lesson goal. And another point is better delivery. If you want to become a presenter or a public speaker or just a teacher, the teachers are also like a presenter and a public speaker very often, because we face large crowds of students, and we have to make sure that our delivery is powerful, emotional, and effective. So our students can feel each and every word that comes out of our mouth, that we utter. Most of the times, as a student myself, I used to listen to some boring lectures just because the teacher, the instructor, the lecturer wasn't inspired and motivated enough to deliver the lecture. I used to just doze off just because the words didn't feel or didn't seem very powerful to me. So the delivery of your instruction matters. Sometimes I witness, some classes in which the teachers have chosen fantastic activities, but just because the way of their delivery was not that engaging or powerful enough, the students were disconnected from the class. So again, a lot more depends on your delivery rather than your content. Now let's proceed to the next one. Student engagement. This is one of the giant pillars of the classroom. If there is no student engagement, we cannot talk about a class at all, because teaching a class is all about engaging people, to get people on board on what you're doing. It's more like a collective process of doing things together rather than a monologue in which one person talks to a bunch of people and they're just passively listening. I'll show you an example, and I want you to choose from these pictures, A or B. If you were about to teach a class about sports, which picture would you choose and why? A or B? Let me check out the chat box. A or B? So I keep seeing A, B. Natia says A. Nafisa says visual. Indira says B, right. And we actually have the answer. Nafisa says visual, powerful, right. When you select examples to your students, make sure your examples are visually appealing. Once the moment your students see certain pictures, they should start feeling it. Or even you can bring the real football, the ball, into your classes, because some of your learners may be tactile. They love touching things. They love learning things through touching. Or you may, bring some stuffed puppets. It may be a lot of fun. You can crack lots of laughter in your classes. That's how your classes could be exhilarating and super fun. So make sure even choosing the right picture would have an emotional and visual impact on your learners. And this is how you can engage your learners. Ladies and gentlemen, let me show you a very interesting picture, and I'll try to discuss with you. So there are two modes of teaching, deductive and inductive. In a deductive mode, the teacher sets the rules, explains the general rules, and then provides lots of examples, and finally give students little time to practice the rules and examples. There is less student engagement, and most of the students may even have tons of questions. By the time they get to practice time, they may even start asking each other or the teacher, like, I quite didn't get what this rule is all about, or I didn't understand this example. Why not, flip this model again and introduce the inductive teaching, where you throw lots of, interesting examples in a form of a sleep, or the picture, or the illustration, or something you can just put it on across the walls in your classroom. And then you invite your students like a walking gallery. You can invite your students, you can actually recreate the traditional activities into your own activity. And you can invite your students to, work out the rules by themselves in a collaborative manner. Or you can even, interfere a bit. You can guide them so that it would be more like a guided discovery. So there will be a lot of interaction between the students, as well as you and the students. And finally, you achieve the desired target, the goal, that your students are now fully, aware of what the rules are all about. And that was your goal. So sometimes it takes very little to be a creative teacher. Just change the order, and then the rest will speak for itself. Ladies and gentlemen, please carefully look at this picture. On your right, you can see Google Office, which is comfy, cozy, and fully furnished. On your right, you can see a traditional office, which looks very sleepy and boring and tedious. I don't want to spend any second there, neither do you, I believe. What is the point in showing you the contrast of these pictures? Just because it depends a lot on the setting where you teach. If you teach in a creative place, If you have a classroom where there are so many creative stuff hanging on the wall, or you have so many toys and puppets and illustrations to incorporate into your classes will just go fantastic. But if you're teaching in a very black and white classroom where there are no toys and creative stuff to make your classes more spirited and lively, then of course it'll be a mountain for you to climb to teach an excellent class. And now let's proceed to the last question. What novelties are you able to integrate into teaching the same class in the future? And for that, I'll show you 3 other points: incorporating multiple techniques. Those 2, just 2 examples, but there are many other techniques that you can incorporate, and not just using one technique all the time, but trying to, shift and swap between the techniques. Multiple settings and arrangements. So are you going to use only horseshoe, or are you going to use the clusters, or are you going to use the semicircle, or pair pods, or group pods? It depends on the activities. It depends on your lesson objectives. So it would be nice if you, from time to time, tend to change the setting, the arrangement. Maybe you don't have to change the entire setting of the classroom. You can just keep adding something, maybe a picture, an illustration. Maybe you can, hang some balloons on the wall. There are many ways of changing the setting. Multiple modes of presentation. Why do we have to rely always on the black and white books or textbooks or written, handouts or slips? We can incorporate things like pictures, videos, authentic videos from YouTube, or you can make your own video as a teacher. I'm a vlogger. I have my YouTube channel, and very often I make videos. I make videos in open air, and I have uploaded some very nice videos onto my YouTube channel, which you can check out after this session. Just because I love making videos, this helps me to push myself further to become more and more creative. And this is an excellent way of, overcoming your shyness. And you can even go on to become an excellent public speaker in the future. So you can incorporate lots of different presentations. And, there's a very nice saying from Mark Anthony. He said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So I'll try to rephrase and contextualize it into the educational setting. If you become a creative teacher, you will never work a day in your life. Do you agree or disagree? Please put it in the chat box. If you become a creative teacher...
Excuse me, Mr. Feruz. I'm sorry to stop you right here. I think someone was trying to share the screen. Could you guys just reshare your screen?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Was my screen visible? Is it okay?
That's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So please put it in the chat box. If you become a creative teacher, you will never work a day in your life. Do you agree or disagree? Someone says, agree 100%. Agree. Wonderful. Yes. You know why? Because when you become a creative teacher, you always constantly in the pursuit of creating stuff. And while you create stuff, you love the process of creating. This is such an enjoyable process of creating something new, something unheard of, something unfamiliar, something that has never been done before, and you will take the credit for that as an author. So that's tons of fun. Now let's proceed to the next point. Be receptive, and I'll show you some very good examples on how to become a creative teacher by being receptive. So here is the outline. Number 1 is stay tuned. Number 2, accept, do not reject. And number 3, listen more. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm showing you, very easy tips and hacks. They seem very banal and primitive at first sight, but they have tons of effect just because they're practical. I'm not going to show you things that might be complicated and sophisticated. I'm showing you things that you might immediately put into practice and see the effect for yourself. And I'm sure you'll have lots of takeaways from today's session, and I will be looking forward to hearing the effects that you have seen in your classes after attending this session. Now let's continue. When you think of a webinar, so when you think of a teacher, a modern teacher, what comes to mind first? Is that the one who juggles back and forth between lots of duties with lots of handouts and books and papers and stationery? Or is that the one, just like me, using a simple laser pointer to have everything tightly under his control? So which one do you see as a modern teacher? Is it the one which has tons of piles of stacks of paper and documents and books and stuff? Or is it the one who smoothly navigates across a smart board using a laser pointer and having the students interact and interface with the latest technology? So that's food for thought. Now here's a question. Here's $1 million question. Are you tech savvy? Are you the one who is good at using technology? Or are you a technophobe, the one who is afraid of using technology? Please put in the chat box yes or no. Let me check out yes or no. Yes. Natia says yes. Sarah says, I'm kind of afraid. Yeah, that's a good point. Piyush says yes. Nigina says yes. Alex says yes. Muazzam says yes. Nasheen says not much. Yeah, and the answers keep coming, yes, yes, yes. If you say yes, I have a good news for you. Check it out. Technology won't replace teachers. Never, because it's just a tool. But teachers who use technology will probably replace teachers who do not. I love this quote because this is such a relevant quote to our modern times, especially when we're living in unsettling times during the global pandemic of COVID-19. You know, we had to transition to an entirely unfamiliar teaching mode, online teaching, distant teaching, hybrid teaching, and blended teaching. There are variations of teachings. And in most of those teachings, we need to actively incorporate technology. And if we are unaware of using technology, if we're digitally non-native teachers, then what are we going to present or bring to the table of our students? That's another question for you to ponder, to reflect upon the end of this presentation. You know, like I said, I was going to show you very easy tips and hacks. You know, listen more, talk less. And you may ask me a question, how to become a creative English teacher? By listening more. Have you ever observed creative people who work for Apple, Google, or some very giant companies in the world, multi-billion-dollar companies in the world, or professors like top professionals in the world of ELT in the world? They're always reserved. They're always less communicative. They're always, thinking about something. They're always thoughtful just because they listen more. They collect ideas from around. And that's how they will have plenty of ideas to choose from. You know, most of the times we feel like, okay, we became like an ace and we don't really need others, feedback or opinion. But that's when we start, committing the biggest mistake of our lifetime. Just because the moment you stop listening to others' opinions or getting some ideas from others, that's when you stop, moving forward. That's when you stop improving. So, if you want to become a creative teacher, you need to really listen. You need to be all ears and constantly listen to people throwing some ideas at you. Some of the ideas might be all too simple, but some of the ideas can be powerful. So you never know. Sometime, around the corner, you will meet a person who will be telling you fantastic ideas. And that's the moment, you will have to reflect and improve yourself. I have a very good example from my own teaching experience in China, in Wuhan. In this picture, you can see myself, even my name, Spoken English by Feruz, 2018. I used to teach English major students, spoken English at the university in Wuhan. I did a very simple trick to fully engage my Chinese students in the class. I had to face about 60 to 70 students in every class. And in this picture alone, you can see more than 50 students. Some of the students are in the backdrop. They can't be seen because of their height. But my trick was that I gave them the choice and the voice. And what is that all about? I gave them the voice to express their concern about their problem in terms of language learning, in terms of why they are succeeding or not doing well. And I gave them the choice to choose the mode of class which would cater their needs best. My students were free, were easy to get along there, to get across their ideas to me in terms of how well we were doing in the class. And they were also free to tell me what kind of class they wanted to have. And over time, listening constantly to my students' suggestions and tips and feedback, I designed a super engaging and interactive class that my students eventually stopped giving me some, suggestions, because I tried to resonate fully what my students wanted from the class. That's what the power of giving choice and voice is all about. With that, we've come to the finale. I have a little more time. Be initiator and what it means. Okay, I'll explain it in a while, but first I'd like to bring up a quote from one of my all-time favorite scholars, Albert Einstein. He said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Yes, indeed. If you want to become a creative English teacher, you have to be imaginative. You have to be visually powerful. You have to foresee things, anticipate the emergencies, etc. You're not there to, merely and passively transmit the knowledge. If your task was that, they wouldn't need you, because the students can do a great deal of self-study these days. Okay, think outside the box and what it means. Let me show you through a number of activities. Coffee clutch. The word clutch means gossip. So this is a kind of a informal culture in Germany where they, have a chit chat, an informal chit chat over a nice cup of coffee. And I tried to, introduce the very German culture to my Chinese students through their English class. I invited them all to the nearby coffee shop. You see that we're sitting in the coffee shop, and I tried to set a series of activities. I designed the entire class inside the coffee shop, and by the end of the event, the owner of the coffee shop was so much enthralled with the entire event that he said, "Today everyone gets a free cup of coffee, and it's on me." The students were super excited. It was actually a big surprise to me as well, because I know in the build-up to the class, we didn't talk about providing students with free cup of coffee, because that's a coffee shop and everyone has to pay for that. But the event went well, and the owner was impressed, so he treated everyone with a free cup of coffee. So instead of teaching the class in the classroom, why not invite your students to the real setting and let them experience for real? That's a totally different experience. That's an experience that your students will remember and cherish for forever, because that's when they do things in an untraditional way. And when you let your students do things in an untraditional way, that's when things become more memorable, and they will be able to commit to their long-term memory. Let me show you another example of thinking outside the box. Potluck is North American culture in which people bring their own stuff to the table, and they happily share, exchanging some laughter, some dialogue, communication. And I tried again to introduce this culture as it is. The first time I introduced, as it is, I told them that we're going to have a potluck, so you need to bring anything. It could be chips, it could be fizzy drinks, it could be crackers, just anything edible. So we just had, an introduction to the Potluck series. And the next time in the center, you can see now I recreated another event, and I named it as Pizza Potluck, in which the entire event revolved around pizza. And at the end of the show or event, the students were told to bring their own pizza, and we, happily shared all pizza. We had lots of pizza there, and some of the pizzas were taken home by the students, So it was an unforgettable event. And then I redesigned the event and took it to a next level. I called it a reunion potluck, in which, again, students were told to bring their own stuff to the table, but the entire event was very different from its predecessors. So that's how you can keep creating and recreating your own activities and events. This was some of the best events that I've ever created and did. It's called Pizza Mania. If you look up the dictionary, there's no such a word, because it is the portmanteau of pizza and mania. Very simply, it means someone who is crazy about pizza. Well, what I did is I introduced the culture of pizza eating, how popular it is, specifically in the United States, to my Chinese students. In China, there are Pizza Huts, but pizza eating is not in their DNA. It's not a popular culture in China. But through this event, which was totally dedicated to pizza, we had lots of gamification, awards, fun, reward, achievement, learning opportunities. And it was the largest event in the history of that particular language school. You can see in a very small, cramped room, there are more than 70 people sitting side by side, including the cameraman. So that was a fantastic event, and they still remember this event. I'm still in touch with most of those students, and they still fondly remember such a great event that we had in the past. That's what thinking outside the box means. So you are brave enough to introduce not just an event, but even a new word like Pizza Mania, So you don't have to always align or consult with what the dictionary offers you, but you can also come up with your own to make it more interesting and engaging. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to recap my presentation because I have the time limit. So now let's quickly have a look on what we had. Work on the details, and I showed you 4 different ways on how to work on details and become a creative English teacher. Then self-reflection, there were very interesting questions, million-dollar questions, and I hope you were able to take lots of screenshots to reflect, to do lots of self-reflection upon the end of this presentation. Be receptive. Yes, always. You have to have a very receptive ear to be able to listen to what people are saying around you, especially the educators, the English teachers, because they have tons of ideas. Some of the ideas may not seem powerful enough, but that should not discourage you. You can take that idea and improve it and take it to another level. This is also a mastery. You can't take the idea fully ready for you to realize. Last but not least, if you want to become a creative English teacher, you need to become an initiator. You need to always initiate and think outside the box. I've shown you some examples, and now it's time to share your key takeaways from the webinar. You can share it in different ways. Either you can go and unmute yourself and express your opinion, or just put it in the chat box if you feel you are shy. So now let me check out the chat box. You can just unmute yourself. In either way, it's fine for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Feruz. We really enjoyed a lot, and we are all very inspired by your thoughts and your ideas shared today. The attendees can ask the questions now, if they wish.
Yes. Before we move on, I'll show you two more slides. If you want to contact with me and do some collaboration or professional work, co-work, you are most welcome to contact me through a number of professional social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, or you can even subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch my classes. I have some creative videos there from my classes, so they can provide you tons of fresh insight. You can also follow me on Instagram. And before we move on to the Q&A, I'll try to bring my final quote from Benjamin Franklin. He said, "Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I remember. Involve me, and I learn." Ladies and gentlemen, teaching and creativity is all about involvement and involving people or students. Thank you very much. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask me.
We have a question here, Mr. Feruz.
Sure.
Hamdi is asking, can we apply your view to the other subjects?
Yeah, can I first stop sharing the screen?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, wonderful. Now you can ask me a question.
So Hamdi is asking, can we apply your view to other subjects besides English?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Thank you, Hamdi, for bringing up that question. I remember I did this similar webinar on another international webinar, on another international platform, and I was asked this similar question, like, can we apply your views into teaching math? Because the teacher was a math teacher. And my response was interesting. I said, today I have shown the essence of being a creative teacher, not only in the light of a language teacher, but all, as a whole, in general, how to become a creative teacher. That was the gist of my presentation, not just specifically in the light or in the context of a language teacher, but some of those ideas. For example, let's say coffee clutch. Imagine you have lots of math students, and I graduated from physics and mathematics lyceum, so I had a very good maths back in time at school, and I know what it means to solve some math problems. It might be painstaking, it might be effortful. So why not, invite your students over or out to a cafe or even an open air and organize a kind of a picnic. You can just lay some mats and like I had in a Japanese garden. We were sitting on a grass just to, become part of the nature. I wanted my students to feel that they're part of the nature, not just, learning is not just in the classroom, which is way too boring and traditional, but learning can take place outside the premise of the classroom, like in the Japanese garden, like in the cafe. So it depends on the purpose, on what you're going to do. Are you going to, have a little bit of fun with your students in an outdoor setting? Then you can invite over your students. Or you can have a potluck, just like I said, potluck. You can recreate the entire potluck event and make it more relevant to your math students. So the idea works well.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I'm sure we all are very enthusiastic to use in our classroom soon. We have time for just one question by
Sure.
Dr. Akeda. She's asking that about rubrics, especially in a culture that is so concerned with measuring learning outcomes. What are your thoughts about rubrics?
Yeah, like I said, most of the teachings are progress related or very, outcome related. So they always have to align with certain kind of rubrics to evaluate the progress that has been accomplished in a certain period of time. But, in terms of creativity, if there is any rubric, I would put it this way. The teacher can effectively incorporate some of the elements of gamification, like reward mechanism, or, inculcating a sense of accomplishment. Inculcating a sense of accomplishment is even way more powerful than just putting a reward on the table, like saying, okay, everyone, I have an award that's a wallet, for example. That's a wallet made in China. So this is the award for someone who is going to finish the task first. That's a physical, reward. But the sense of accomplishment, for example, I was able to feel that I made some progress through this activity. And this is what, exhilarates me to become super motivated learner and do my best, just put my whole heart into this activity in the future. So it all depends on how the teacher is going to involve the students. Rubrics may not always work to a large extent, because I know that rubrics are always there in a traditional class, because in a public school, it may be a little too tricky and challenging to evaluate if the students are, doing any creative work. But it's still possible. Like I said, it depends on how you are going to incorporate the elements of gamification. Is that going to be a physical reward, or is that going to be just inculcating and fostering a sense of accomplishment? The students have to feel that they achieved something. They need to have a sense of fulfillment from the class. And the rubric will, the rubric will be just less effective when compared with a sense of accomplishment. So I recommend the questioner to focus more on inculcating the sense of accomplishment in the students, rather than trying to evaluate through the rubric, because the rubric may not give a fair assessment of what the student is doing and is capable of. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Feruz. We have come to the end of the session, and we would like to thank you at this point for giving your time to come at our platform and presenting today. We are recording this session, and it will be uploaded soon in next 24 hours on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. So those people can get enlightened who are asking for the presentation later. Thank you so much, Mr. Feroz, and we look forward to see you in our future events too.
Thank you very much. The pleasure was mine. I enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Bye for now.